Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. 888-589-8840 if you want to join the conversation. 888-589-8840. Let's start this segment with a quick call. Let's go to Larry, Shreveport, Louisiana. Larry, talk to me. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian. Good show you got going.
Thank you, sir.
You're talking. We're all want to make a plane. It may be.
Larry, you're cutting out on us a little bit. Can you find a place where you got a good, strong signal and kind of stay there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine. Go right ahead.
Okay. I think maybe that plane may be around your chair, hit around your chair, and all that other debris that you was talking about you had there. So.
All right, I didn't understand what you said.
That the plane may be around your chair. Lost plane.
that's where we lost it.
Yeah,
somehow got dropped on the floor, and I haven't found it yet, and that's where we'll find it when we look for it.
But I hope we don't get into over in that Crimea. We can't do a protracted war. We can't fight a war over there and not get our nose blooded. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree, Larry, and I appreciate your call. And I have a number of reasons why I just believe we ought to stay out of there. Number one is more a moral reason than anything else. We have no moral reason to go into somebody else's house. I mean, that's not our fight. Those are next door neighbors. They've got to work that out between the two of them. As far as I know, we haven't been invited to go in there, number one. And number two, I just think it's a matter of respecting national sovereignty and realizing, look, there are some squabbles that the United States just cannot and should not even try to resolve. You think about the efforts we've made since World War II, and every one of them has been a dismal disaster in the end. I mean, the Vietnam War, that was a disaster. Desert Storm was a success. The reason it was a success, we had a clearly defined military objective. We went in, we got the job done, and we left. Now, we didn't take out Saddam. Everybody looking back says that probably was a mistake. That was the last successful military engagement from start to finish we had. Now, when we went into Iraq or went into Afghanistan 2001, we were successful. 3 months, we're in there. 3 months, the Taliban has been dethroned. They've been defeated. We should have left. In there, get it done, and get out. Mission accomplished, job over. Instead, we've been mired down in Afghanistan for the last 13 years. We're going to have absolutely nothing to show for all the treasure and American blood that has been spilled on Afghani soil. Same thing with Iraq. We had a clear-cut military objective, depose Saddam. We went in there. We deposed him, pulled down the statue. We should have left out of their history. Instead, we tried to stay. And that's where the problem was. Now, Iraq is just falling apart. Another story about a car bomb today, 19 people dead. It is like we were never there. I mean, there are just some situations where you just cannot go in and you can't set things right unless you intend to go in and take it over and make it an American colony where you establish a military presence and you run the place, and nobody has any interest in doing that. Well, that's absolutely the only way you're going to bring any kind of stability or peace to these regions. And that's the other part. I think secondarily, it's just pragmatically, it just wouldn't work. We don't have the military strength to do it. The supply lines are way too long. And by the way, I haven't read a lot about this lately, but I don't think that the Russian military is nearly as strong as people think it is. I think the morale is low in the Russian military. It's an all draft army. The conscriptions are for 12 months at a time, so you don't have a lot of long-term military career types in there. They want to do their time and go home. So I just, and they're going to have real supply line problems if they try to go into Ukraine and sustaining that. So I think, and the lesson to the other nations of the world, hey, look, you might want to do what you need to do to protect your borders. You might want to amp up. You might want to armor up. If you want some help on how you do it, come to the United States. We'll be glad to show you how we prepare a military, how we train a military, how we fund a military, how we equip a military, what we do to make sure we can defend our sovereignty so that you be in a position to do that when it comes to your front door. Now, clip number 6, if we can, Lene, this is John Bolton talking about John Kerry. John Kerry went over there to try to talk to the Ukrainians and reassure them, we've got your back, we're going to support you, we're going to be with you. But he talks about sending John Kerry over there to take on Vladimir Putin. Here's what he had to say.
The Obama administration and the Europeans are demonstrating weakness. These sanctions are pinpricks. And, you know, we sent Secretary of State John Kerry to London to negotiate with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. That's like sending a cupcake to negotiate with a steak knife. Well, I think Putin has the high cards politically, economically, and militarily, and he's not afraid to play them. We've got, in the West collectively, a real failure of leadership. We've ignored the security issues that are inherent in Ukraine not being part of NATO after the Europeans rejected it in 2008. So after 5 years of failing to even think about this issue, we're now seeing the consequences.
So John Kerry, Barack Obama, that's like a cupcake up against a steak knife. You know how that confrontation is going to turn out. You know, and again, we're turning into the laughingstock of the world. Even Time magazine put that picture of President Obama riding his little goofy bicycle with his goofy little bicycle hat. I mean, he reminded you if he reminded you of anybody, it was Pee Wee Herman. Now, that's what Time magazine did. They put that picture up there right next, adjacent to a picture of Vladimir Putin, looking like Clint Eastwood, you know, riding his horse, bare-shirted out on the Russian steppes. So, I mean, the image that Time magazine was creating is we've got Pee Wee Herman and they've got Dirty Harry. Well, who's going to win that showdown? Not hard to figure that out. Now, Charles Krauthammer, clip 15, Krauthammer talking to Bill O'Reilly, and he's asking Charles Krauthammer, who's a pretty smart guy, why do you think, you know, Bill O'Reilly says, why does Obama do this stuff? Because he's got to be smart enough to know what the perception is going to be when he doesn't like go to a national security meeting, and we don't know where he's at, whether he's off playing golf or what. I mean, they're turning this administration into a complete joke. I don't know if you've seen this, but President Obama is trying to push young people to buy Obamacare by running all these hip and trendy ads from young people that he thinks the millennial generation would idolize. And he had a video. This is on the White House website, the healthcare.gov website. Got a picture of a young woman twerking in the bathroom, standing on the sink, twerking in the mirror. I mean, she's wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt and stuff, so it's not salacious, but she's in there twerking in the bathroom, and she falls off on her fanny. And this is supposed to be how they convince you got to go buy Obamacare. I mean, it's just to the point where I just saw that, and I got to tell you, I literally hung my head in shame for my country when I saw this is what we have been reduced to, using YouTube videos to promote government programs. I mean, it was frankly, it was just sad. It was pathetic. It's just kind of beneath what a nation really ought to be. So anyway, Bill O'Reilly asks Krauthammer, why does Barack Obama do these things? Here's what Krauthammer had to say.
Why do you think he does this stuff? He's smart enough to know the perception is going to be guys like you and me. We're going to say, what are you playing golf for when you got a crisis in this area? He knows that. Why does he do it?
I think it's a kind of arrogance. He thinks he actually has a good foreign policy. I think he's semi-delusional about the results of these 5 years. There is not a spot in the world. You can go from Syria to Libya to Iran, to China, to Russia, to Ukraine, where the United States is not worse off, less regarded, considered weak than it was 5 years ago. This is a completely failed foreign policy, and he seems radically unaware of that.
You know, I think that's an insightful observation. It's one thing, I'm trying to figure out how to put this, I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head, but it's kind of one thing to have a terrible foreign policy and to know that it's terrible, to realize that it's terrible, and to look around for some sort of help to fix it. It's a whole other thing when you have an absolutely terrible, dismal, failed, pathetic foreign policy, but you yourself think it's brilliant. You think it is a strategic gem. You think that you are the master of the foreign policy universe. You think that there's nobody that's smarter about foreign affairs than you, and that you have a brilliant strategy and a brilliant foreign policy plan. I mean, that is the most lethally dangerous combination you could have, to have a failed foreign policy being managed by a guy that actually thinks it is brilliant, because there's no hope that he's going to look for any sort of help. Now, you know, one of the things I've said a number of times, getting back to the military and our engagement with Islam, You know, I've said this repeatedly. I'll keep saying it. We are not at war with Islam, but Islam is at war with us. Islam is at war with us. Islam is at war with the West. Now, I'm not saying all Muslims are. Please don't misunderstand me. Most Muslims don't want to kill us. Most Muslims don't want to cut our heads off. But part of the problem is we don't know how to tell the difference between the ones that do and the ones that don't. And the ones that do, the radical Muslims, the committed Muslims, they are really out to destroy us. Now, grab clip 16. This is the director of the CIA, John Brennan. And again, this goes to the issue of how deluded. I mean, Charles Krauthammer says President Obama is semi-delusional about his foreign policy. Here is John Brennan. This guy is not semi-delusional about Islam and the threat of Islam. He is completely delusional. Let's listen.
Same thing with Al-Qaeda. You know, they have a perverse and very corrupt interpretation of Quran. One of the things that I'm struck with when I travel throughout the Middle East and I meet with leaders, military and civilian, these are individuals who are Quranic scholars themselves, and they are the ones who are most annoyed at how Al-Qaeda has hijacked their religion and how they have really distorted the teachings of Muhammad, you know, for violent purposes. Now, quite unfortunately, though, that ideology, that agenda of Al-Qaeda has gained resonance and following in many parts of the world.
You know, I mean, this is completely, totally delusional, that he thinks what Al-Qaeda is talking about is a perversion or a distortion. Those are his words, a perversion or a distortion of the Quran or Islam. That's not what you see with Al-Qaeda. That is the manifestation of Islam. That is the implementation of the Quran. It's not a twisting of the Quran. It's an application of the Quran. You know, and this is a guy that's responsible for managing our intelligence. And the number one task now is to figure out what Muslims are up to, the Muslims that want to destroy us, what they're up to. And this guy is completely deluded about the nature of Islam in the modern world. You know, the first rule of war is you got to know your enemy, and this administration clearly does not. You know, I've argued that we should suspend the practice of having Muslims in the military. Here is another case in point, story from The Blaze. 20-year-old California student, an outgoing National Guard member, was arrested and charged after planning to join Islamic extremists in Syria after he had plotted to blow up the Los Angeles subway system. He's a Muslim convert. He's a member of the National Guard. I say no more Muslims in the military, even if they are Muslim converts. Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.